Chosen one, I need you to stop for a moment before this goes any further. Not because what I'm about to say requires preparation, because what I am about to say requires presence. And most people who find this kind of content are so accustomed to consuming it passively that they have forgotten what it feels like to actually receive something. So stop, breathe once, and hear this. You carry something that the invisible world has been responding to for longer than you have been paying attention. Not because you performed anything correctly, not because your faith has been flawless or your choices have been without error, but because there is something at the core of who you are that operates at a frequency that the natural world simply cannot produce. I do not say this to make you feel better. I say this because what you are about to discover in this message is going to reframe every strange encounter you have ever had. Every room that shifted when you walked in, every conversation that went somewhere unexpected, every moment when someone looked at you and said something they could not explain why they said. Those were not coincidences, those were responses. Subscribe to this channel right now and activate every notification. What I am building in this message does not arrive in the first few minutes. It builds. And what it builds toward is the kind of understanding that changes how you move through every room for the rest of your life. If you are already subscribed, that tells me something about you. You came back. And people who come back are exactly the ones this transmission was prepared for. Write in the comments if you have ever walked into a situation and felt something shift around you that you could not name or explain. Stay until the end, because the most important thing I am going to say is not at the beginning. Let me start with something that will feel uncomfortable before it feels like freedom. You have spent most of your life trying to make yourself smaller than you actually are, not out of weakness, out of something that looked like wisdom from the outside. You learned somewhere along the way that the full expression of who you are creates friction, that when you are completely yourself, without apology, without reduction, without the careful management of how much of you is allowed into a room at once, something happens around you that other people do not always know how to handle. So you learn to manage it, to turn it down, to present a version of yourself that was calibrated for the comfort of the people around you. And you called it humility. And sometimes it was, but sometimes it was something else entirely. Sometimes it was the quiet surrender of something you were never supposed to surrender, because the thing that makes other people uncomfortable in your presence is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a frequency to be understood. There is a verse in 1 Peter that most people read and pass over without fully registering what it is saying. 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 12. The apostle is describing the nature of the salvation and calling that belongs to chosen ones. And he says something that should stop every reader in their tracks. He says the prophets searched intently and with greatest care about this calling. And then he adds this: even angels long to look into these things. Even angels long to look into these things. The Greek word translated as long here is epithumio. It is the same word used for the strongest human desires. Deep longing, intense reaching. The kind of wanting that does not simply note an interest, but actively orients itself toward what it wants. Angels, beings of pure spirit who exist in the direct presence of divine reality, who have never experienced doubt or darkness, or the particular weight of being human. Look at what you carry and feel something that can only be described as longing to understand it. Not pity, not casual curiosity, longing, because what you carry, the capacity to choose faith without seeing, to love without certainty of return, to persist through seasons that give you every reason to stop, is something that exists nowhere else in creation. Angels obey in the direct presence of glory. Their faithfulness is not tested the way yours is tested. They have never had to believe without evidence, because evidence is the atmosphere they inhabit. You believe in the dark, and that specific capacity. Faith exercised behind the veil. Trust extended without confirmation. Hope maintained without visibility is what makes beings of pure spirit turn their full attention toward you with something approaching wonder. You have been so focused on what you cannot see that you missed what was watching you. Now, let me tell you something about presence that most people have never been taught to understand. Every living thing emits something, not in a mystical sense that requires special belief to accept, in the straightforward sense that everything with genuine life in it affects what surrounds it. A fire does not need to announce itself. Its heat reaches you before you can see the flame. Its light changes the quality of darkness in a room before you have turned to face it. Something in the atmosphere shifts around genuine fire in a way that cannot be faked by anything that is merely warm. You carry that kind of presence, not because you are perfect, not because your life has been without compromise or failure or the ordinary mess of being human, but because there is something genuinely alive at your core. something that was placed there before you were born, before you had the opportunity to earn it or lose it. That affects what surrounds you the way fire affects a room. You have felt this in moments when you were not trying to produce any particular effect, when you were simply being yourself, not performing, not managing, not carefully curating how much of you was present. In those unguarded moments, something happened around you. The conversation changed direction. The person across from you said something they did not plan to say. The atmosphere in the room shifted in a way that people noticed but could not account for. That was not your personality. That was not social skill or charisma, or any quality that can be produced by effort or training. That was frequency. And frequency, unlike performance, cannot be faked. It can only be carried. Let me tell you a story. There was a craftsman who spent 40 years working in a city known for its markets. Every morning he opened his stall, and every evening he closed it. And in between he worked with such complete absorption in what he was doing that he rarely noticed anything beyond the immediate task in his hands. He was not famous. He did not seek attention. He simply worked with the kind of precision that comes not from training alone, but from something that training only reveals, not creates. And people came to watch, not because he invited them, not because there was anything dramatic to observe, because something about the quality of his presence when he worked created a kind of stillness in the air around him that people who were passing by felt without understanding why they had stopped. Children stopped first, animals came next, then adults who should have had somewhere else to be. None of them could have explained what they were responding to. The craftsman himself could not have explained it. He was simply doing what he had always done with complete integrity. Without awareness of the effect his presence was producing, he was not trying to be significant. He was trying to be faithful to what was in his hands. And the faithfulness itself carried something that the striving never could have produced. This is what you have been doing, not always visibly, not always with awareness of what it was producing, but in the consistent, daily, unspectacular work of being who you actually are, in the private choices, the unwitnessed integrity, the faithfulness to something you cannot always see clearly. You have been carrying a frequency that the world around you has been responding to, and there are dimensions of the world beyond what your physical eyes can see that have been responding to it too. Isaiah chapter 6 contains one of the most dramatic encounter scenes in all Scripture. The prophet sees the Lord high and lifted up, the train of his robe filling the temple. Seraphim, beings of pure divine fire, are flying above, covering their faces, crying out to one another in words that have echoed through 3,000 years of worship. Holy, holy, holy. The repetition is not for emphasis in the ordinary sense. In Hebrew, repeating something 3 times is the superlative, the holiest, the most completely other, the most set apart from everything that is ordinary or common or reducible to human categories. And in that scene, when Isaiah encounters the full weight of what that holiness actually is, his response is immediate and total. He says, "Woe is me, I am undone." Not because he is being punished, not because God is angry with him, but because genuine holiness, when you stand in proximity to it, reveals the full reality of everything you are and everything you are not. It does not perform judgment. It simply is. And its being is enough to make everything small and performed and managed collapse. And then a seraphim, a being made of pure divine fire, moves toward Isaiah with a coal from the altar and touches it to his mouth and says, "Your iniquity is taken away. Your sin is purged." Now I want you to notice something about the sequence. The seraphim moved while Isaiah was undone, not after he had recovered, not after he had composed himself, not after he had demonstrated sufficient worthiness to deserve the approach. While he was undone, heaven moves toward honesty, toward the person who is exactly what they are, without management or performance, or the careful presentation of a version of themselves designed to be more acceptable. The craftsman who was simply working, Isaiah who was simply undone. Both of them, in their different ways, were simply present, unguarded, unperformed. And in both cases, what surrounded them responded. For those who want to understand more about how to walk consciously in the frequency you carry, how to stop managing it down and start allowing it to operate at its full expression, there is material in the description and pinned comment that goes deeper into exactly this. Now let me bring you to the thing that has been building since the first sentence of this message. There is a reason that what you carry produces the response it produces in the world around you, not just in human beings, in the quality of situations, in the way things tend to resolve around you in ways that surprise you, in the specific nature of what gets drawn into your life and what gets repelled. And the reason is not mystical in the sense of being inaccessible or available only to special people with special training. The reason is that you carry something genuine, and genuine things. Things that are actually what they appear to be. Things that have not been diluted or performed or managed into a version of themselves that is more comfortable for others. Produce responses that imitations cannot produce. A mirror reflects light. A window transmits it. From a distance, they can look identical, but stand in the room and you know immediately which one you are dealing with. The mirror gives you yourself back. The window gives you what is beyond it. You have been a window. Not because you chose it, because what was placed in you before you arrived here is too real to simply reflect what surrounds you. It reaches through. It transmits something that came from beyond the room. And that transmission, that quality of carrying something genuine that is beyond what can be manufactured, is what the room has been responding to. Every unexpected conversation, every moment when something shifted around you, every encounter where you said something that landed deeper than you intended or helped someone in a way you did not fully understand. That was not you performing well. That was you transmitting clearly. And the difference between performance and transmission is everything. Performance is exhausting. It requires constant maintenance. It collapses under sufficient pressure because what is being maintained is a construction, and constructions require energy to sustain. Transmission is simply what happens when something genuine is present. It does not require effort. It requires honesty. It requires the willingness to stop managing yourself down to a size that fits other people's comfort. It requires being without apology what you actually are. Let me tell you what this means for the opposition you have faced. Because if you carry something genuine, things produce real responses. Then the resistance in your life has not been random. It has been proportional. You do not fight hard for things that do not matter. You do not construct elaborate opposition against threats that are not real. The enemy of human flourishing is not disorganized. He does not waste resources on targets that are not worth the investment. The intensity of what you have faced is a measurement, not of your weakness, of the significance of what is being opposed. And here is what I want you to understand about that opposition in light of everything I have been showing you. He cannot silence a frequency. He can create noise. He can produce distraction, confusion, discouragement, the accumulated weight of difficulty designed to make you too exhausted to transmit clearly. He can surround genuine fire with enough smoke that other people have trouble seeing the light. But he cannot extinguish what he did not ignite. What was placed in you before you arrived here was not placed by him. He has no authority over the source of it and no ability to reach the deepest place where it lives. He can affect the conditions. He cannot touch the frequency, and the frequency has been operating this entire time, through every season of difficulty, through every period of silence, through every moment when you were so surrounded by the smoke of what was coming against you that you could not see your own light. It was still transmitting. The room was still responding. And beings with perception beyond what your physical senses access were still watching. With the longing that 1 Peter describes, the longing to understand what only a human soul can carry, the specific mystery of what it looks like when genuine faith operates behind the veil. You have been more visible in the invisible than you have felt in the visible. Now I want to bring you to the climax of everything this transmission has been building toward, because I have shown you the frequency. I have shown you the response it produces. I have shown you the longing of those who observe it. I have shown you why the opposition has been proportional to what you carry. And now I need to show you what comes next. There is a pattern in Scripture that repeats so consistently that it cannot be coincidence. It is the pattern of the hidden revealed, of the frequency that operated in obscurity for a season being brought forward into full expression. Joseph spent years in obscurity, in a pit, in a prison, in situations that from the outside looked like the complete derailment of any meaningful purpose. And what was happening during those years was not the suspension of his purpose. It was the preparation of it, the specific, unglamorous, unwitnessed formation that made him capable of carrying what was coming when it arrived. The moment his obscurity ended was not the moment his purpose began. It was the moment it became visible. His purpose had been operating the whole time, in the pit, in the prison, in the years of waiting that made no sense given the dreams he had been given. You are in the transition between the obscure operation of your purpose and its visible expression. Not because you have finally become worthy of visibility, because the preparation that happened in the years that felt like nothing has produced something ready to be seen. The room that shifted when you walked in, the conversations that went somewhere unexpected, the quality of presence that drew people without your trying to draw them. Those were not anomalies in an otherwise ordinary life. Those were the early expressions of something that is about to become significantly harder to ignore. The frequency you carry has been transmitting in obscurity, and what is coming is not the beginning of your impact. It is the amplification of what has always been true about you. Here is what I want to leave you with. Stop trying to manage down what you carry. Not because being humble is wrong. Humility is real and necessary and worth protecting. But there is a counterfeit humility that is simply the refusal to occupy the space you were actually made for. That is not virtue. That is vacancy. And vacancy is not what you were made for. The craftsman did not make himself smaller to avoid making others uncomfortable with the quality of his presence. He simply worked with full integrity, with complete absorption in what was in his hands, without managing the effect. And the effect took care of itself. Your assignment is not to produce impact. It is to be present, genuinely, unguardedly, without the careful management that has cost you more energy than you know. The impact is already happening. It has been happening. In the rooms that shifted, in the conversations that went somewhere unexpected, in the beings with ancient perception who have been watching with something approaching longing. The room has always been responding. Your only job is to stop turning yourself down. Write in the comments if this transmission names something that has been true about you for longer than you have had language for it. For those ready to go deeper, to understand how to align consciously with the frequency you carry, and to work with the specific tools designed for exactly this kind of soul. The material in the description and pinned comment was made for you. 3 frequencies, 396 hates, 639 hates, and 963 hates, with a complete ebook and full audiobook narrated by the watcher. Share this with someone who has been managing themselves down for too long and needs to hear that what they carry is not a problem to be corrected. And click on the video appearing on your screen right now. What follows this transmission connects directly to what happens when the frequency you carry stops being obscured and starts operating at full expression. Together we are stronger,